Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. Hope you had a great week. I always check in with you to see how you're doing and how you're coping with the summer and the kids and all the activities. Really important to enjoy this time, especially if you're in this part of the world where it's summer, like in the United States, because we are just about 2 to 3 weeks away from September, Labor Day, and the unofficial end of summer, which to me is mind-boggling because it seems like we just got started. I'm now getting into the gear of summer and it's over. The good thing is that, well, good and bad, we have something called climate change, which is bad, but the good thing is that the warm weather these days lasts all the way into November sometimes, so we still have some time to do like I like to do these days, get out, do some bike riding, some sightseeing, spend some time outdoor with the family and friends and enjoy the weather before we have to be stuck indoors for several months again. This week, I'm going to talk about a few topics, maybe 3 or 4 topics that are in the news or on my mind. Not sure what I will call the episode, but by the time you hear it on Friday morning, it will have a title. Again, as always, I want to thank my new subscribers, my existing subscribers for your continued support. I ask you to continue to like, share, comment, and help me to grow this podcast and send this message as far and wide as I can. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm going to look here to my left, which is going to look like you're right. At the few topics that I wrote down, I have on my screen to my side here. I want to start off with something simple because the other ones are more complicated. I live in Nassau County, New York, and most recently there was a law that was passed, a law that you would be charged, you get a fine for wearing a mask in public. And the whole idea behind this, I don't know what type of law to call it, I'll get an adjective for a moment, is because people have been using masks to mask their identity when they commit crimes. But the way the law is written right now is just another way of oppressing to me, at least in my opinion. I don't understand how you enforce it. I have so many friends and families and even strangers that I see frequently, when commuting, that wear masks still to this day. And they cover from the top of their nose down to the bottom of their chin. These are people like myself who had the first variant of COVID, which was deadly. These are people who have come out of COVID with respiratory illnesses and with weaker immune systems. These are people who have developed anxiety and phobias. These are people who have, since the original COVID, have had COVID multiple times. My brother is one of them who did not get the original COVID, but I think he's had this variant of COVID, which is a lot easier to deal with and more like a flu, but he's had like 2 or 3 times. So he wears a mask on the train. He doesn't live in Nassau, he lives in Queens. And what was crazy when it kind of caught my attention is when I always see him wearing a mask. I went to pick him up at the railroad, he wasn't wearing it. I thought it's strange, but I didn't say anything. But then going back, he mentioned to me that he's gonna wait till the train gets to Jamaica, the Jamaica station, then he'll put his mask on. Not because he doesn't want to wear his mask completely through the ride because he's had COVID multiple times, but because it's now against the law to wear this mask in Nassau County. We are getting to the point where politics and politicians are becoming downright foolish. We're getting to the point where the ideology behind passing laws is not the better for the people, by the people, for the people. It's more about attracting a certain set of ignorance that they figure will be a stronghold when they're running for office to keep themselves or to get themselves into power. If you're going to pass a law that talks about wearing masks in public, you got to come a little better than just a law that you can be fined or charged. If I'm sitting on the train and I'm wearing a mask and I'm in Long Island and a police officer comes up to me, and I say, well, I'm wearing it because I have a phobia, because of anxiety, because I have asthma, because I have allergies, which I do. I think you guys who follow my channel know that I get allergy shots. It was every week. Now I'm up to once a month. You see me blink my eyes a lot during episodes. That's allergies. It's air blowing in here from the air conditioner. Actually, let me put that on silent mode. And it affects my eyes. So whatever particles is blowing, it has blowing around. So if I'm on the train, I'm wearing a mask, and you decide to find me, it's my word against yours, right? Now it's up to the officer to decide whether he believes me or not. So I could either be someone who really needs to wear a mask because of my allergies, but I don't have medical documentation. I could be someone who has medical documentation, but not on me. I could be someone who has a phobia, anxiety, or I could be a criminal. The way the law is written, how does an officer discern that and decide whether or not to give me a ticket? And if you give me a ticket now that I have to go to court for, now you're costing me a day of work. You're impacting my income, my earnings, my way of feeding my family and take care of my bills, because you decided that this foolish law, you needed to enforce it. And how does the officer select it other than that? We are in a charged, divisive time in this society where we've dealt with so many cases of racism, both in every industry in this society, including law enforcement. So why does the law officer give the person a ticket? He's human. She is human. How do you know it's not an issue of racism or prejudice? This is the most ignorant thing, and yet we keep electing officials who have so many bigger challenges to solve. You are telling me that you're going to put your efforts, politicians, elections times coming up, behind showing the public or showing your constituents, oh, I got something passed. It doesn't matter how ignorant it is. How about passing laws or enforcing things like streamlining bail reform, so that the criminals that we find committing these crimes that is often proved now to be repeat offenders, not once, not 2 times, but 7, 15, 40 times arrested, and then let out again out of jail, out of court. There was a case recently, I think I spoke about it last episode, where this guy who was deported before went before the court for a crime that the bail reform law says allowed him to get no bail. And he was out, and the judge ordered him to go to see his probation officer to get a monitoring anchor bracelet, someone who had been deported before, right? He was in the wind, he was gone. Never showed up to his probation officer's office, never got the ankle bracelet. How about looking at laws and ways to stop the crime, rather than take the people, ordinary citizens who are going back and forth, minding their own business, living their lives, doing the right thing, doing their jobs. You're subjecting them to unpleasant and horrible situations that can escalate because you're too lazy, too incompetent, too greedy, too narcissistic to be the politicians that you were elected to be. I'm being as blunt as I can be because I'm tired of sugarcoating some of these things. This is ridiculous. And until it is fleshed out and properly figured out, it should never be a law. I think I say enough about that because I don't need to tell you more about what that's about. So let me move on. Some time ago, I had an episode talking about the direction that the world is going in, and we're heading towards World War III. Many of you communicated with me and agreed, and some of you said that, yes, we're going to have World War III, but it's way too early. It doesn't seem like these escalations are going to happen. The escalation to a World War III might take years, but we're heading there. Most recently, we've had this situation in England that's gotten out of control, this race-based situation. We've had a situation where in Israel, where Iran is now involved in a conflict with Israel. And Iran has promised to retaliate. As a measure of being big brother, the United States has now sent a naval strike force into that region. What does that sound like to you? We're not de-escalating. We're escalating. We've got a situation where innocent people, innocent Palestinians are being killed. We've got a situation where Israel feels it has the right to wipe out Hamas and is doing so by any means necessary. We've got a situation that has no middle ground. We have a situation that we're not going towards de-escalation, but as long as this goes on, other regions are starting to get pulled into this war because of ideological differences, because of hatred of each other as humankind. You don't see that as the Porky and the Bear of World War III? Pay attention. Look at what's going on out there. Recognize that there's no de-escalation going on. It's only escalation. And when you think something has been de-escalated, no, it wasn't de-escalated. It was just shifted to another region as a part of continuous escalation. Look at the war with Russia and Ukraine. The hope was that Russia and Ukraine war would end. The hope was that the Ukrainians, who have obviously shown their resolve above and beyond when it comes to defending their country, where all men and women are fighting who are non-military to stop the invasion of the Russians. We've gone to a new level. I'm not talking right and wrong, don't get me wrong. But we have escalated now because now Ukraine has attacked Russians on Russian soil. We're not talking about whether they had a right to because they were attacked. What I'm talking about is where the war is going. That's an escalation. The Ukraine has a right to defend its territory. They were invaded, but that is an escalation. Again, putting aside what your position is on the war, whose side you're on, understand that the actions of each side are not leading towards de-escalation. We are leading towards a larger conflict with deadlier consequences, because now you will have others being pulled into the war. You look at regions like Venezuela, where there's a dictator, Maduro, who had elections. Now, there was an agreement between President Biden and Maduro that, initially President Biden had lifted sanctions that were crippling Venezuela, and then he reimposed the sanctions because of Maduro's dictatorship. And part of the agreement to lift sanctions again was that Maduro would hold free and fair elections. Elections were held. It is very clear to everyone looking on that Maduro lost, but he hasn't given up. He's gone back to his dictatorship to maintain control of the country. Escalation. This is happening in all parts of the world. And collectively, we are heading towards disaster, towards a world war. A world war means that there are wars all over the world. This is what I'm seeing. It may take years. We might be old. We might be not even here. We might be dead and gone. But mark my words and make no mistake, that's where we're heading. And when I think about the last point I wanted to make for this episode, I'm going back to the temperature in our society. I'm back in that struggle of whether or not to unfriend friends on Facebook. Friends who have such derogatory, nasty things to say about Kamala Harris. I've got one particular friend that I've known, I think I've mentioned before, that I've known him probably 50 years, and I'm struggling. Every single day he makes a post that has no ideological value, no liberal or conservative ideological value, no Republican, Democrat ideological value. The last comment I saw was he questioned why Kamala Harris, who has talked about being mixed and a person of color, why she did not choose a black man as her running mate. She chose a white man, therefore hypocritical, and a bunch of derogatory statements that followed. If I look at the choice that Kamala Harris made, not picking any candidate at this point, but I think it was a good choice. I think it was a smart choice. smart in terms of recognizing who Americans are. We are the United States of America, but we are so far from united. This country may very well elect a woman president, the first in history. But look at how much of the country is struggling with the choice, not based on her record, based on her positions on various things that affect us in society, but based on her color, her ethnicity, and her gender. And the bottom line is that had she chosen a black male as a running mate, this country would have discarded her immediately because of the rampant divisive racism that is the gurgitating underbelly of this society. Accepting a woman of color as president, that's not far-fetched. We had a man of color already. But accepting a woman of color with a running mate of color, which means the entire leadership of this country would be of color, Americans are not ready to do that. Because we cannot get past race. We try to tell the rest of the world what a democracy should look like. Let's look in the mirror. What I'm saying to you is not fictional. What I'm saying to you is not hate-based speech. What I'm saying to you is not prejudice speech. What I'm saying to you is truth discerned from our actions. I have watched, the other day I watched a video where police had to be involved because there was a demonstration of white supremacists, and it was at the time when schools were letting out and some children of color, black children, were crossing the street. Children, and these adult, self-proclaimed white supremacists stood there at the children's school crosswalk calling them the N-word. Children, adults. They didn't even differentiate and say, you know what? Yes, I'm self-defined as a white supremacist, but I'm not gonna enforce my positions, my hatred, my bigotry upon children. You know, you gotta love the Bible when you look for guidance in this world. What does that verse say? Suffer the little children to come unto me, forbid them not, for such as these the kingdom of heaven belongs. The innocence of children, tainted. The child was flabbergasted. I think one of the children was crying. Couldn't figure this out. We just finished talking about Sonia Massey, where the world saw a white cop go into her home because she called for help because of a prowler, telling her to turn off the water on the stove. She went to the stove 20 feet away from this cop, picked up the pot of water. They were conversing, so she turned towards him, still about 20 feet apart. He told her, don't come towards me, towards that pot of water. She says, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. He says, what did you say to me? She repeated it, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. He says, put the water down, which she did. He says, you said, what did you say to me? You said it again, I'll shoot you in your expletive head. She put the water down. She cowered down. She says, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He went around the counter and shot her in her head and killed her. This is not hearsay. This is on the body cam that originally they tried to suppress. This is who America is. Here's an officer who, I'm sorry, if he was a person of color, would not have been on the force because he had been to 6 different police departments in 4 years. He had disciplinary actions. He had DUI on his record multiple times. But this country still cannot get past color. We struggle with the fact that human beings are human beings. Here we are in 2024, and we can't get to the point of discussing the positions, the ideological positions of our candidates for an election that's about September, October, 4 months away, 4.5 months away, because the racism in this country that we should be embarrassed and ashamed about is front and foremost in our society. Whether you like it or not, We've gone through presidencies where presidents have done nothing to quell the racism, but have rather given new life to an epidemic that, while it still existed, was locked away in the closet because America was heading full force towards equality, towards equal rights. And then we had a stint of leadership that said, you can open the closet, you can come out, and you can go public with your beliefs. You can wage a war against equality, and it's okay. We've had situations in places like Florida where governors have tried to made laws to remove history. Governments and officials who are trying to remove words like diversity, ethnicity, gender, equality from existence in our society. Politicians who are trying to remove history from schools. Could you imagine if they succeed across the United States? A child that's born 50 years from now would be reading history books that have no mention of slavery. As a man of color, I'm going to say this to you, looking right in the lens of this camera. No one is talking about rewriting history so that things like the Holocaust are erased. What they want to erase, let's face it, is Black history. What they want to erase is the shame of slavery, of the criminal acts that were committed against people of color. So that in years to come and in generations to come, the world will say, what are you talking about? Because as we leave this earth, the story will be lost and no one will know what really occurred and what one race did to the other so many hundred years ago. We cannot let this happen. Black history, history of America, history of the world has to remain as the fundamental of education. You can't be educated in any other area, in any other train, in any other discipline, if you don't truly know the history of who you are, of where you're from, of what your ancestors went through, and what they did that results in where we are today. The prices that were paid, the blood that was shed. You cannot erase that. People want to get rid of what they call the woke initiative, the woke phenomenon. Being woke is where we need to be to understand where we need to go, to understand our history and our place in history. I often reach out to you and ask you to take a moment to do something to be a part of what I'm trying to do, create a movement of change. I know many of you have seen the numbers. Many people download the audio podcast, the audio version, and over time, the audience has grown for my YouTube version. It's still, the numbers are nowhere where I want them to be. But if it's 1 of you, 10 of you, 20, 80, 100, whatever, I'm appreciative. My point is, there are a few of you who continue to be involved in the fight, whether it be with me or on your own. But most of you listen to the podcast, watch the episodes, give me great comments of agreement and great encouragement. But then you go back to your lives, status quo. The bottom line is, you may not be able to do what I'm doing. I'm out here speaking my mind, sharing what's going on in my world and what my understanding of it, and asking you to become involved. Whatever that means to you, become involved. Whether that means that you find some organization that you think and you know and you research is doing the right thing and you give them $5 out of your hard-earned money. Whether it be that you join some organization or become part of some initiative to go to schools and speak to our children about your experiences in life and remind them whose we are and where we've come from. Whether it be that you join this initiative and you reach out to me and you brainstorm as to where next we go and how we do it to make the conversation louder and bigger. I continue to beg you to become part of the solution. I know life is tough. I have the same struggles. And it's easy after you listen to an episode and you're moved by what I've said to turn off your computers, to close the episode, to close YouTube and go back to your lives the way they were, the way they are. But when the time comes in our generations to come that are our offspring are going through difficulties that we could have changed, that we could have helped, are going through struggles that we never intended, we have nothing but ourselves to blame. Doing nothing is no longer an option. It may seem too tough. You may feel too tired when the week comes and the end of the day comes to do one more thing. But you have to. You have to make that sacrifice. You have to decide that you have to earn a place in the lives of your offspring and future generations. You have to decide that you have to do something, somehow, some way to be a part of making a difference. Listen to what I'm saying and mark my words. The tears of our generations to come will be upon our hands. The bloodshed of our generations to come will be our fault if we choose today to do nothing and expect change in years and decades to come. I pray to my Creator all the time that He may give me a long, healthy life, that I may live to see the fruition of the efforts I'm making now, and I may live long enough to reach goals of making a change. I pray that He blesses and chooses to honor my prayer, to give me the grace and mercy to honor my prayer. But no matter what, a day will come when this camera may be on, but I will no longer be sitting behind, or in front of the camera, I should say. The only thing that will remain in history is the message I share with you and the messages I share with you. Look around you. Understand the decay of who we are that's going on right beneath our feet and right below our eyes, right in front of our eyes. Understand that the decisions we make today affect and will affect our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren who will be here tomorrow. Understand that I said it, yes, we're tired, we're frustrated, we make efforts and we don't see change. But this race that we're running is not a sprint. It is a slow marathon. And there are going to be obstacles. It's a massive obstacle course that we have to have the intestinal fortitude to stay on the path. We must make a difference. We have to make a change. I applaud those who continue to fight to have their voices heard, even when no one is listening. You saw my 200th episode where I had my civil rights activist brother, Mr. Motanya Gladden, come on here and talk about what he has done, where he has traveled to in Africa to see our origins. He is a man who continues to speak out and be a part of movement to make the world never forget what we endured, so that our children and our generations to come will know where they came from and what they need to do to make progress, to stand up, to be heard, and to keep the movement going. While he has committed his life to doing this, you may not be on the same level he is, but you have to be on some level that involves progress and change. The days that you can sit quietly and say, let someone else do it, those are long gone. It is time for you to act. That time is now. As I said to you, I'm not asking you to contribute to me. Find your way of contributing, but you have to contribute. You have to make an effort, small and bigger, however size you can, and commit to it and commit to growing it. This is my effort. When you see me every week, if you ever see inside of my studio, you would understand the sacrifice financially I've made to make this happen each and every week. Expensive equipment breaks and I have to find a way to replace it while managing my family, my bills, my expenses, and my struggle. But this is more important than all of that, because this, to me, is not only giving back in the way I should, this is me paying my price and saying to my Creator, thank you for the life you've given me. Here is my answer and my effort to be somehow earning my right and place to be here. The weather is still great outside. Continue to enjoy it. Continue to be safe. Continue to recognize injustices and speak up and stand out for them, even when you might be in a minority, even when you might be ridiculed, even when you might have to fight a battle that seems too big to fight. I'm here with you. Those people who join my podcast and who continue to contribute each week, we're here with you. Let's stand collectively, because if we stand for nothing, we'll fall for anything. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. Until the next time, please take care of yourselves and each other.